This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Iraqi parliament approves Prime Minister's resignation as anti-government protests continue.
Our war against nature must stop, and we know that that is possible.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres calls for urgent action on climate change ahead of Monday's summit in Madrid. And Uganda fights to reduce mother-to-child transmission of HIV. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme, African nations grapple with challenge of caring for a rising population of elderly citizens. And in sports, Ugandan athlete Joshua Cheptegei smashes the world 10-kilometre world record. Iraq's parliament has approved the resignation of the Prime Minister 2 days after the embattled leader offered to step down. For 2 months, Iraq has been gripped by protests that have left more than 400 people dead. Adel Abdul Mahdi announced his resignation shortly after the country's top Shia spiritual leader condemned the use of force against demonstrators. Iraqis across the country have been marching to mourn those killed in demonstrations. Many are demanding more change. Key members of the Prime Minister's government are also set to step down. Well, for more on the Iraqi protests, we earlier spoke to CGTN's Samia Kulab in Baghdad.
Iraq's parliament formally accepted Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi's resignation. It was not put to a vote, which was expected. Instead, Parliament unanimously agreed to accept the resignation. The next steps will be for the president to nominate a new candidate in the next 15 days. But in order to do that, different political blocs in Parliament have to agree on who that nominee will be. That was an issue following the May 2018 election, which was prolonged for about 4 months. So lawmakers are saying one of two things could happen. Either there will be protracted talks again, or a provisional alliance between rival blocs might be reached, which was the case with Adel Abdul Mahdi, for a new candidate. Protesters don't see Adel Abdul Mahdi's resignation as meeting their quite grand, sweeping demands. They want to see the end of the post-2003 political system, which they say has not acted in their interests. They want to see snap elections. They want to see new faces in government. They want to have a greater say in who those new faces will be. So they don't see the resignation of one man as coming close to meeting those ambitions, those demands. They say that Adel Abdul Mahdi's resignation is merely one small battle in what will be a very long war for reforms.
Ahead of a major climate change conference on Monday, the head of the United Nations is stressing the need for immediate and serious action.
Our war against nature must stop, and we know that that is possible. The scientific community has provided us with a roadmap to achieve this. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we must limit global temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, reach carbon neutrality by 2050, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% from 2010 levels by 2030.
Antonio Guterres criticized the international community for lacking the will to face a climate emergency, calling the effort utterly inadequate. This year's summit is supposed to chart crucial steps to reduce carbon emissions, which continue to rise to record levels. Spain became the host country 3 weeks ago after ongoing protests forced Chile to pull out at the last minute. It's World AIDS Day, and communities around the world have been recognised for their role in helping to curb the spread of acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The World Health Organization has applauded health workers and activists for their hard work in reducing stigma and advocating for better healthcare. Globally, there are over 38 million people living with HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, that can, if left untreated, lead to AIDS. CGTN's Julie Shear sat down with Lebogang Mostumi, a South African activist who discovered that she had HIV in 2009.
Lebogang Mostumi tested positive for HIV 10 years ago. She's one of over 7.7 million South Africans living with the virus. The news defied her belief about HIV and threw her life into turmoil.
Every time they would teach us about HIV, it wouldn't be for us, it was for them. Them being people living in the rural areas, people that are uneducated, sex workers. It took me being on my deathbed to accept my status, simply because when I looked in the mirror, I was seeing the face of HIV.
Motsumi's escape from AIDS brought a new purpose to her life. She picked up the pieces and became a fierce voice for others on the same journey.
I really appreciate hearing people's stories and helping other people living with HIV to kind of accept their status working with young people, being able to share my story so they don't tell the same story, you know. They tell different stories of young people who made informed choices.
Close to 5 million South Africans are on antiretrovirals, but Lebogang called for greater healthcare investment. The passionate advocate has welcomed a groundbreaking study by Wits University, which combines antiretrovirals and contraceptives.
The idea is that once these products are shown to be effective in preventing HIV infection, and also that they're safe, that for women we may be able to combine them with the contraceptive, and so women could have an HIV prevention method combined with a pregnancy prevention method all in one injection.
Over 3,000 women across sub-Saharan Africa are on the trials, but it may take a few more years before it's available on the market.
Before they introduced the one pill, I was just taking a lot of pills and they had tremendous side effects. So to have an injection like that ensures us that we have got dual protection without being separate. And we've always been saying we need a holistic approach to a human living with HIV.
Medical researchers have made significant progress around antiretroviral treatments in the last 2 decades, but the stigma around HIV still remains the biggest hurdle. Lebogang's biggest goal is changing attitudes and helping people understand they're not defined by HIV. Julie Shear, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Uganda, too, has joined the rest of the world in marking World AIDS Day. There has been significant progress with the HIV prevalence rate now at 6% compared to 7.3% in 2011. The country is hoping to bring an end to new HIV infections by ensuring those infected receive treatment and eliminating mother-to-child transmission. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria now reports.
At home, I never faced internal stigma.
Josephine Nabukenya found out she was HIV positive after reading her mom's will. She was only 8 years old at the time, and the news shocked her.
At that particular moment, I felt bad, right? Because we knew I was being taught about HIV at school. So I knew what HIV was, I knew there was no cure, and all the stigmatizing things that you get to know about HIV at first came to me. You're going to die, your mother's going to die, and all that stuff. But by God's grace, it did not affect me. It did not come along with me for a very long time.
Josephine's mom had enrolled her on medication without disclosing her status. Now at 26 years old, Josephine shares her story in a book called Beyond Status. The book advises young people to test for HIV and start medication if infected.
I mean, there is no suppression if you do not take your medication very well, right? And knowing that at such an early age has helped me. Ever since we started doing viral load, I'll be honest with you that they've never given me my results with I hear copies or you're not suppressed. I've always been undetectable. And it is always because of the good adherence that I've always had from day one. Not because it's easy, but even when it's hard, I find ways of actually going through and taking my medication regardless of the scenario. Have everyone.
Josephine now gives talks about HIV to various support groups. Support groups like this allow people living with HIV participate in activities together, as well as learn new ways of how to cope with the disease. And Josephine is here to ensure that they don't suffer discrimination like what she went through. HIV/AIDS agencies in Uganda warn discrimination can lead to drug resistance, affecting the health of HIV-positive people. People shy away from taking medication when stigmatized. The 2018 report by the Uganda Virus Research Institute shows 2 in every 10 people living with HIV suffered drug resistance.
It affects the fight against HIV quite significantly, because every time you have someone with the resistant virus, they are more likely going to progress to disease later on. This is someone who can pass on the virus, unlike someone who has a virus which is still susceptible to treatment and is well controlled, it's undetectable.
The government is trying to get as many people tested and put on treatment and to ensure they adhere to their treatment. And so Josephine says she won't tire talking to young people about the importance of staying on treatment with the hope of eradicating HIV from Uganda. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
We are going to a short break. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including African nations grapple with challenge of caring for a rising population of elderly citizens. And a young Ivorian jeweler makes waves across West Africa with diamonds and Tahitian cultured pearls.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Hong Kong's Mass Transit Railway says that all subway lines will be back to normal operations on Monday, except Hong Kong University Station. Thousands of protesters returned to the streets of Hong Kong this weekend in a fresh wave of demonstrations. It comes a week after district council elections. Our reporter Zhu Xinshen has more.
But mostly some of these rallies have received letters of no objection from the police. But police used tear gas after some radical protesters threw bricks at them during an afternoon march from Tsim Sha Tsui to the Hong Kong Coliseum next to the Polytechnic University. The crowds died down a bit after being hit with tear gas and pepper spray. The Hong Kong Museum of History and the Science Museum, both along the protest march route, closed early on Sunday. Smaller protests on Hong Kong Island were pretty peaceful, including one at the Edinburgh Place, calling for no more tear gas, another one at Chater Garden. So in fact, black-clad protesters returned to Hong Kong and gathered on Saturday evening already around the Mong Kok district, a spot frequently overrun by protesters. Things soon got ugly after a protester threw a petrol bomb at the police car parked nearby, and another protester swung a hard object at the head of a resident who was clearing up a roadblock put by protesters. Police say the 53-year-old man is now being treated in the hospital right behind me, the Kwong Wang Hospital on the Kowloon Peninsula. He suffered a serious injury to the head and his cell phone was stolen. A video clip of the incident surfaced online, during which the person behind the camera shouted insults at the man, saying he was stupid for cleaning up the roadblock and stupidly fell down after being hit on his head. Only one man in a yellow reflective vest, usually worn by the press, was seen in the footage helping the man, while a dozen black-clad protesters just watched. We spoke to the hospital authorities here in Hong Kong, but due to privacy concerns, they did not provide detailed information about the injured man. However, hospital authorities say 3 people were wounded during Saturday's unrest. 1 has been discharged and 2 are in stable condition.
Meanwhile, more than 200 people joined a flash mob in Hong Kong to make a stand against violence. They gathered at the Clock Tower, that's a popular landmark there, to sing the Chinese national anthem and to wave flags. Organisers say violence from the ongoing protests is not helping Hong Kong, so they say they gathered to make a patriotic public statement.
I believe the election in Hong Kong was fair and just, but the result may not be what we want. I hope the candidates who got elected can really serve the community instead of doing something that would destroy Hong Kong.
The Human Rights and Democracy Act doesn't represent Hong Kong, doesn't represent the whole world. What they know is so little. Hong Kongers don't need to rely on the US. Hong Kong is China's Hong Kong. The act has no effect on us.
Life expectancy has risen across the African continent. This leaves many countries facing a particular challenge: how to care for the elderly. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa reports on how an organisation in Kenya is tackling this issue.
A shadow appears in the doorway, alerting Zipporah that she has a guest. It is an occurrence which shines a sliver of light into her otherwise humdrum life. Zipporah can't quite tell how old she is, only that she is over 90. Unable to go far, she spends her days in the little house she shares with her son.
It's not very comfortable to live with my son. I often struggle even to get food.
5 of her children died, leaving her with 3 young children to raise, with few resources. So receiving a visitor brightens Zipporah's days, especially when the visitor comes bearing gifts. Her visitor today is Joyce, the founder of an organization that cares for elderly people in Nyeri, a town that's right next to Mount Kenya. She and her colleagues do some cleaning and tidying up before leaving for the next visit to an elderly blind woman who shares a compound with her grandson. Until Joyce stepped in, she was mostly left to her own devices. Questions abound as to how to care for the elderly as Kenya's population ages. In Kenya, the idea of homes for the elderly is a novel one. Instead, most elderly people prefer to remain at home, where increasingly they find themselves alone. The 2009 census found that Kenya had over 1.2 million people over the age of 65. That number has since risen.
There's neglect and abandonment because now they're tired and people don't want to be associated with them. Another challenge it's stigma, the stigmatization by the society because of aging. That is ageism, which is age discrimination.
Every month, the government gives registered senior citizens a stipend of $20 to cover expenses such as healthcare and food, but it doesn't address their loneliness.
The global changing landscape and the social fabric has altered so many things in life or in the world. The technology, the likes urbanization, in search of good living. So it has found a lot of people, elderly people, neglected and left. And unlike the past, where the society was taking care of each other, there's that community and togetherness. Yeah.
For Joyce, this is a labor of love born out of her own mother's death. She and the volunteers distribute donations from well-wishers and can only do so much. They would like communities and families to step in. After all, they say aging is inevitable and society must prepare to tackle an issue that awaits everyone. Wilkista Nyabwa, CGTN.
A folklore dance troupe made up of former students of a university in Cairo are taking Egyptians on a trip down memory lane. CGTN's Yasser Hakim was at one of their shows and filed this report.
Those are not professional dancers. They're graduates from the American University in Cairo, and many of them have graduated more than 20 years ago.
25 years after we've been performing as undergraduates, it was beautiful to come back once again. It was unparalleled. It's a privilege to be here on stage once again. I can't really describe how much I feel. The euphoria of going back on stage after 25 years is just unrivaled.
When I was a student, I was in the folklore troupe in AUC. So when I graduated, I was really excited to know that there's an alumni group as well that still continue dancing folklore. They never stop. So it got me really excited that I won't stop dancing after graduation. And as soon as I graduated, I joined them.
The members took time out of their jobs and family life to reunite their folklore group. Pinky Slim has been the driving force behind this reunion to continue her love for dancing.
I came up with a plan to start contacting people who were part of the folklore troupe when they were undergrads and asked them, would you like to join us, and so on. It was founded in 2013. We were 6 dancers when we started, and today, like you saw, around 30 dancers were participating from different age groups.
The show includes different types of folklore dances, each representing a different area in Egypt. For example, this stick dance represents Upper Egypt, and this one is from the Mediterranean coastal cities such as Alexandria.
Our aim right now is to revive the art. Folklore is not really celebrated in Egypt. People are trying to learn all kinds of dances, Latin, hip-hop, African, but nobody, it's almost lost. Nobody wants to dance our heritage, our own dances. And this is our mission right now. We want to revive this lost art.
I love the dances, I love the moves, I love the group, the girls, the boys. I don't know if you know, but their ages starts from the 20s to over 50s. Some of them were my colleagues in the university. They are very vibrant. They have a lot of energy, enthusiasm. They love what they're doing. The passion is there.
The performance is not just aimed at reviving the forgotten folkloric dance.
To support financial aid and scholarships at AUC. So every alum bought a ticket. He is participating in this fund to help other students on campus to get the same opportunity that he got when he was on campus. So it is for scholarships and financial aid at AUC.
The success of the show has prompted the participants to consider establishing a group to perform on a continuous basis. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Fantastic. We are going to a short break now. We've got all the sports news coming up, including Ugandan athlete Joshua Cheptegei smashes the